In 1851, London hosted the Great Exhibition at the Crystal Palace, a monument to British industrial supremacy that attracted over 6 million visitors from across the globe. The British Empire controlled a quarter of the world's land and population, and the United Kingdom was the workshop of the world, producing more manufactured goods than any other nation on earth. Workers from Scotland, Wales, England, and Ireland flocked to factories, shipyards, and coal mines, building the infrastructure that would power the Industrial Revolution. The Port of London was the busiest in the world, processing goods from every corner of the empire. British steel built railways across continents. British textiles clothed millions. British engineering prowess was unmatched. Young men and women left rural villages for cities like Manchester, Birmingham, and Glasgow, chasing the promise of steady wages and a better life. The UK was not just a place to work, it was the place to work. Fast forward to 2025, and the story has completely reversed. Today, the United Kingdom faces an unprecedented labor crisis. Businesses across every sector report chronic staff shortages. Hospitals cannot find enough nurses. Restaurants close early because they lack kitchen staff. Construction projects sit frozen for months waiting for workers. Fruit rots in fields because there is nobody to pick it. The UK has job vacancies in the hundreds of thousands, yet millions of working-age Britons remain outside the labor force. Even more striking, Britain is experiencing a brain drain not seen since the post-war years. Highly skilled professionals, the doctors, engineers, software developers, and finance experts who once flocked to London are now leaving in record numbers. Young graduates are emigrating to Canada, Australia, and the United States immediately after university. The question everyone is asking is simple but profound. Why has the UK, once the most desirable place to work in the world, become a country that people are desperate to leave? The answer lies in a toxic combination of economic stagnation, political mismanagement, and a cost of living crisis that has made work in Britain financially unsustainable for millions. But to understand how dire the situation has become, we need to look at what happened after Brexit, after COVID, and after more than a decade of policies that hollowed out the British economy from the inside. The exodus began slowly, then all at once. After the 2016 Brexit referendum, the UK lost access to the European single market and freedom of movement. Overnight, the Polish builders, Romanian farm workers, Spanish nurses, and Italian chefs who had filled critical gaps in the British labor market began to leave. Official statistics show that between 2017 and 2021, the UK lost over 1.3 million EU workers. Many returned to their home countries where wages had risen and opportunities had improved. Others moved to Germany, the Netherlands, or Ireland, where they could work freely without visa restrictions. British businesses that had relied on this flexible European workforce suddenly found themselves unable to staff their operations. But the exodus was not limited to EU migrants. British citizens themselves began leaving in unprecedented numbers. In 2022 and 2023, net emigration of UK nationals reached levels not seen in 50 years. The typical profile of these immigrants tells a damning story. They are young, educated, and skilled. They are doctors tired of the crumbling National Health Service. They are tech workers who can earn twice as much in the United States. They are teachers exhausted by low pay and impossible workloads. They are tradespeople who cannot afford to buy homes in the country they are building. What makes this brain drain so devastating is that the UK is not just losing workers, it is losing the workers it spent decades and billions of pounds educating. The country trains nurses and then watches them leave for Australia, where salaries are 40% higher. It educates software engineers at world-class universities and then sees them depart for Silicon Valley or Toronto. It produces talented entrepreneurs who launch their startups in Berlin or Singapore because the UK business environment has become too hostile. This is not a temporary blip or a post-pandemic adjustment. This is a structural collapse of the British labour market that has been building for 15 years. The UK labour crisis is not the result of a single policy failure, but rather a perfect storm of interconnected disasters that have made work in Britain economically irrational for millions of people. At the center of this crisis is a cost of living catastrophe that has destroyed the value of British wages. Since 2010, real wages in the UK, adjusted for inflation, have barely grown at all. British workers today earn roughly the same in real terms as they did 15 years ago, the longest period of wage stagnation since the Napoleonic Wars. Meanwhile, the cost of everything else has exploded. Housing costs have risen faster in the UK than almost anywhere else in the developed world. The average house in Britain now costs more than 8 times the average salary, compared to 4 times in the 1,990 seconds. In London and the South East, the ratio is even worse, with homes costing 12 to 15 times average earnings. Young workers face a brutal choice. Spend 60 to 70% of their income on rent in expensive cities where jobs exist, or move to cheaper regions where good jobs are scarce. For millions, neither option is acceptable, so they leave the country entirely. but housing is just one piece of the puzzle. Transportation costs in the UK are among the highest in Europe. A monthly train pass in London costs over £250, more than workers pay in Paris, Berlin, or Madrid. Childcare costs are astronomical, with full-time nursery fees often exceeding £1,000 per month, effectively pricing an entire generation out of parenthood or forcing one parent to stop working entirely. Energy bills have tripled since 2021, food inflation has run rampant, and council taxes continue to rise. The result is that even well-paid professionals find themselves living paycheck to paycheck, unable to save, unable to buy property, unable to plan for the future. Then there is the tax burden. The UK now has the highest tax rates in 70 years, yet public services are collapsing. Workers pay more in income tax, national insurance, and VAT than ever before, but the National Health Service has waiting lists in the millions, schools are falling apart, public transportation is unreliable, and social services have been cut to the bone. British workers are paying Scandinavian-level taxes but receiving American-level public services. The social contract has broken down completely. For skilled professionals, the calculation is simple. Why work in the UK, where a doctor earns £50,000, pays 40% in taxes, spends $30,000 on rent, and waits 8 months for an NHS appointment when that same doctor can move to Australia and earn £90,000 with lower taxes, affordable housing, and better public services? The answer is obvious, and tens of thousands are making that choice every year. Brexit accelerated this crisis by creating labor shortages that drove up costs for businesses while simultaneously making the UK less attractive to foreign workers. Companies that once hired freely from across Europe now face mountains of visa paperwork, sponsorship costs, and salary thresholds that make hiring international talent prohibitively expensive. The combination of labor shortages and immigration restrictions has created a doom loop. Businesses cannot find workers, so they reduce hours or close locations, which reduces economic growth, which reduces wages, which makes the UK even less attractive to workers, which worsens the labor shortage. Meanwhile, British workers who remain in the country are increasingly opting out of work entirely. The number of working-age Britons who are economically inactive, meaning they are neither working nor looking for work, has risen to over 9 million people. Many have left the workforce due to long-term illness, a problem exacerbated by NHS waiting lists that leave people unable to get treatment for months or years. Others have taken early retirement, burned out by decades of stagnant wages and rising costs. Still others have simply given up, concluding that work in Britain no longer pays enough to justify the effort. The UK government has responded to this crisis with policies that have made the situation worse. Rather than investing in public services, increasing wages, or reducing housing costs, successive governments have focused on austerity, cutting benefits, and making it harder for people to claim support. The result is a country where work does not pay, where ambition is not rewarded, and where the social mobility that once defined British society has collapsed entirely. Today, the UK is trapped in a vicious cycle. Young people cannot afford to work in the country because wages are too low and costs are too high. Businesses cannot find workers because talented people are leaving for better opportunities abroad. The government cannot raise wages or improve services because economic growth has stalled. And economic growth has stalled because the workforce is shrinking and productivity is falling. This is not a problem that will fix itself, and without radical intervention, the UK risks becoming a cautionary tale of how a once great economy can collapse in a single generation. The British Empire built the modern world, but modern Britain cannot even staff its own hospitals, schools, and shops. That is the crisis facing the United Kingdom today.